This project is to construct a super cheap paddleboard. Has to be small enough to fit in the bed of my small pickup and maneuverable enough to make it through swamps and mangroves and that kind of thing. So this is my first board that you see here, and I'm going to show you how I made the second one. There's the first board, 8 feet long, 30 inches wide, 4 inches thick. The white coating is latex paint. The brown is spar varnish. You can see the handles there, which are necessary to carry it, but this design doesn't hold up too well, so I'm gonna have to modify that. You can see on the side my horrible glassing job. This was my first attempt, and those bumps there are caused by using zip ties to strap down the top, which means you can't get the knots down flat enough. So again, that'll be corrected in the other version. So it starts out with two 5mm, 8 foot long sheets of plywood. They are laid out by eye and cut by hand. I do everything by hand. So here's the board starting to come together. The side pieces are strapped together in the front and then stitched to the bottom using fishing line instead of zip ties. The shape is laid out using that center line that you can see in the middle. That secondary line is where one of the stringers will go. Panels are glued together with P&L polyurethane adhesive. There's a little butt blocking to extend the back end. And there's what the stitching looks like from the outside. So the front has a taper to help it break waves, but there's very little rocker front to back. This construction technique is very forgiving. You don't have to worry about getting them exactly matched up because you're going to coat it with adhesive and fiberglass and resin. On the inside, make sure that you seal all the seams and plug all the holes. So here's the stringers and the braces coming together. In this design I used less wood, so not all of the braces go all the way to the bottom of the board. Installing these is the hardest part. It's very important to save yourself a lot of time by making sure that these pieces all mount flush. If they stick up at all, you're going to have to sand them down so that the top board doesn't wobble. So here's the top panels coming on. Wasn't quite long enough, so I had to add that little piece at the back. You can see there's a gap here because I cut my top piece a little too narrow. I didn't account for the way the sideboards would flex out, but that's okay because you can fill it in with the adhesive and the fiberglass. The taper on the back helps it have less tail drag. The first version was square on the back and had quite a bit of drag. These tabs that you see on the bottom will be cut off as soon as we get a little fiberglass and resin on there. So there it is with the P&L adhesive filling the gap. This will have to be sanded down flush before the glass goes on. You can see it's very easy to fill the gap. Use the P&L though. I tried a couple of other brands and they weren't as good. So you also need a paddle. The blade is made the same way. 2 1/4-inch sheets of plywood glued together at right angles for rigidity. Trace out the shape and cut it out. Fins are done the same way. 2 1/4-inch pieces. They have to be shaved down to be hydrodynamic, so I just use a chisel, do everything by hand like I said. You will need fins to make it track straight. The fins just get glassed on. So here's the fins glassed on. You just lay the fiberglass cloth around the bottom edge and then fill it up with resin. So there's both boards. You didn't get to see my glassing job because it's horrible, but this board is a little bit longer, 2 inches narrower, has the tapered tail. There's the paddle completed. Just used a long dowel, cut it to length, tapered the top, and used a piece to form a T. Bolted the blade to it with stainless steel bolts, cut a notch in it to give it a spot to rest, and then the whole thing gets coated in resin. So here's the board in action. It's faster, a little more maneuverable. This version cost me about $60. The first one cost about $50. If you've ever priced out paddle boards, you'll find that you really can't beat that. So, hope you enjoyed the design and give it a try.